Special meeting of the Judson Board of Trustees is hereby called to order at 5:08 p.m. I'm very pleased that you have taken time to join us this evening. In compliance with the State Government Code on Open Meetings, tonight's agenda has been appropriately posted. We have established a quorum and I will call roll. I'll start with you, Ms. Eaton.
Present.
Ms. King.
Shatanya King, present.
Ms. Canoyer.
Suzanne Canoyer, present.
Mr. Diaz.
Rafael Diaz, present.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Jennifer Rodriguez, present.
Renee Pichelle, present. And to my immediate right is our facilitator, Patricia Arvanites.
Good job.
You got it.
And we also have our superintendent of schools, Dr. Jeanette Ball. And Dr. Ball, would you like to introduce your staff?
Yes, good evening. Tonight with me I have Ceci Davis and also Dr. Mary Duhar-Toppin.
Welcome. Okay, we do not have any public comment tonight. So we will move on to item 4, Team of 8 training, and I'll turn it over to you, Patricia.
All right, excellent. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I was just thinking of the word. I know you're going to ask for that.
I know I'm going to ask. So you guys already are ahead of me. So we're on our last night of this series, right? And then we're going to go out and do some deliberation, do some different things, and then we're going to come back. So how are you feeling? What's our one-word check-in tonight? How are you feeling? Who wants to start? I'm going to start with Dr. Ball.
So this word might not make sense, but clarified.
All right.
And I don't mind explaining if you want me to.
You can.
So I feel clarified because last night we did a lot of work, but I still, in my mind, had a lot of questions, so I really didn't say much because I wanted to go back and meet with the team, and we spent several hours today meeting, I feel just clarified.
Oh,
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. How about Trustee Pichelle? Good, I said it right.
I'm kind of tired today.
That's just what every facilitator wants to hear.
This is that workout with Jimmy.
That's all right. That's all right. All right. Trustee Rodriguez.
I'm going to say renewed, and I'll explain because I had a teacher who was taken and failed the special education test twice, and she had one last attempt this weekend, and she passed. Yay! Keep her job and get the salary and all the things, so I'm very excited for her.
Awesome.
Excellent.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Trustee Diaz.
Caught me looking up a list.
I didn't miss that
A
one.
list of what?
Yeah.
One word? There's a list out there?
Yeah, I should do this like an hour before. Right?
Are you reading off a list? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cheating.
I
No,
know,
it's
but
perfect.
it's, yeah.
It's just a
I was
combination.
going to say chingon, but I thought purposeful was better.
Okay. All right. Good. All right.
Yes, that's a good one.
We'll swing around to Trustee Eaton.
Happy.
Happy. I noticed you had a hop in your step when you walked in, Trustee Eaton. So, all right. Sneaky.
though, of the amount of work that we accomplished so far.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
A ton. Excellent. Trustee Canoyer.
Focused.
Focused. All right. Ladies. Humbled.
Inspired.
Inspired. Excellent. Those are good words. Trustee Macias, welcome this evening. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for that. We'll do a checkout, and then that's it. See you. Just kidding.
How you feeling?
Oh, that's right. Oh, sorry. Just smashed that. I feel good. I think we have made incredible progress. We have a lot. We've had some really great board dialogue in this room around really important things like student outcomes. So I'm super excited about that. I love it. And tonight I think we're going to clarify a few more things. And we have leaders. We have our experts in the room too to clarify our numbers and our data. So that's really important. So I'm excited. Okay, so let's just get to it. Now, I know that yesterday I said we'll just move right into the progress measures, and we were talking about that, but I also said, if you recall, that we needed to reconfirm some of the baseline numbers, we needed to look at the data, and so I'm really grateful that the leadership team was able to get together, take a look at all of that. So there's some numbers we want to clarify, and there's some, they've also done a lot of work and some conversation around targets, so we need to have that conversation. So that's what we're going to focus on the first part of this evening, and then we're going to move to the second half of our framework, okay? So, there we are. So these are where we are from last night. I have corrected the, did I do that right? No, I didn't do that right. And Betty's gone. All right, let's write them up here. Sorry. I tried to copy those over really quick before there, but I see there's 2 CCMRs. But that's all right. Let's just look at the 3rd grade literacy. And so
Wow, whoever did that, thank you.
we adjusted the baseline number for 3rd grade scores meets grade level above on STAR. Wow, I really got crazy
The
here.
reading one, yeah.
Yeah, that's a bad deal. Okay, and Betty's gone. So we're going to write it down
But
on
tell
the
me
board.
what, I could probably help if you tell me what you need to
You just need
do.
to get here to your,
I just need to
presentation.
adjust my,
Okay, sure, Mike can help us with that too.
that's what you get when you try and do it in 5 minutes.
oh, is it under my bag? Oh, it's an adult.
I didn't, for the one time I didn't send it to her in. But maybe I can email it to him.
Thank you.
Yeah, she can't fix the PDF, so she's gonna have.
Can I email it again to you?
You have to email it to me.
Okay.
Email it to me and I can get it real quick. I'll tell you what my email address is.
Okay. Hold on, let me just get this. No.
Gabriel. Yeah, I just feel like, it'll be very long.
Find it better?
That's 3rd grade, math, CCMR, 7th grade. Okay, good now. Not that. Okay, so now I'm going to download this as a, do you want a PDF? And I'm going to email it to you at, right there.
And they don't want to invest in it for that, and then, the thing floods, but it's on a high enough ground that it should be okay. But it's right almost behind it.
Not catching
But
yet.
that would be nice, because then
Davis, that's me.
And all that.
It's a nice detail.
like upscale, it's going to be upscale, not
No problem.
for kids, but grown. That would be nice, and then have the ball running for like weddings.
But they're not.
Yeah.
Like in terms of that.
So they're looking at it.
But I guess I'm used to that too, so I'm like,
Yeah.
Okay, catastrophe averted. I only messed up one, but it looked worse than that.
Oh, yeah.
I think I
Oh,
did.
no. If it takes them 5 years, 6 years, whatever it takes, is what it's gonna take.
In the area where Chick-fil-A is. The educator where the Target is.
I know.
To the left of that, none of that has been rented out. Check that box out. And so,
It's hard when
I'm
reality
Oh,
doesn't
really?
match
Okay.
hopes and
right now.
All right. give it a minute here. Apologize.
Flexibility is the key.
We think about getting together.
That's
and,
right. Look at how far
making
you've
that
come
stadium
from what the expectations were.
What is gonna happen, an adult on one side and a kid on the side. You know,
But it's hard.
So we're working on that right now.
Very hard. Because you and Anthony are not about that, I know.
Maybe I need to go to the calendar.
I can't do it no more.
But I don't even know how to go to the calendar.
Now you use the, not the flu shot, get a flu shot.
So then it's also,
So where's my calendar? Okay, so here's the calendar. That's what it was. Donde? Right here. And then I just put it to the person?
Yes, and then select what kind of details you want that person to see.
I don't even know what that means.
But I can't say anything because, you know,
No,
she
you don't
got
want to
it
crush your
on
dreams.
us. She got it on us.
Well, yeah, you wonder where.
I know.
But she should not.
Yeah, we get this deal to go, that'd be nice. What is holding us up is that they want to lease us the building. We don't want to buy it.
Request permission to view recipient's copy. She already gave me her.
There's some
It
things
is, because
that
they built
God
it
gives
in,
you
they
the grace
decided
to do.
it's 10 Walmarts
I've already
around.
stopped trying. So I'm just gonna acknowledge that you have that ability. It is a superpower.
I learned in college.
False control, you got.
And you already have mine?
Then you got right there, it's
Okay. I thought I did, but
Hey, so it's like, we got enough.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
know. I just look at my color.
You can take off.
All right. Sorry about that. We got some updated numbers. So.
Here we go.
All right, so third grade literacy, we had a goal of 4. We had older numbers. We didn't have the right baseline. So we corrected the baseline, which is 31%. I believe before we had 30,
We had, before we had
36.
36, yes.
So we corrected that to make sure we had the correct data. And then you guys had set a goal of 57%. Based on that data we had before, which was a little bit higher. And then when we talked to the district for the leadership, they had a different recommendation, and I'd love for them to explain a little bit of how they got to their number.
Sure. Oh, go ahead. No. Go ahead, Sissy, go. Yeah, I don't mind. No, I'm totally good.
So one of the things that we were looking at is trying to compare and align the data that we have. And so when we're looking at this data, we're talking about student achievement data. But keeping that in mind, the state allows us to look at either student achievement or student progress. As this is written as a student achievement goal and we keep it as a student achievement goal, then our recommendation would be to meet by June 2026 at 40%. And where that came from was when House Bill 3 came out and asked us to write a goal very similar to this, what Ms. Patricia had showed us earlier. Even the state's template had about a 2 to 3% increase per year, which is what is attainable. That template came out pre-COVID. And so pre-COVID, the state was saying, this is what is attainable. Now we've heard our commissioner speak that now that COVID is present, it could take up to 5 years to even start seeing some of the results that we've seen before. And so if you follow that same alignment, our recommendation would be 40%.
So I think when I appreciate that, and so when we look at that, 40% is a 9%, right? Am I right? Oh, yeah, I think so. So we had we were looking at if that number was 36 last night, we were thinking a 21% growth. Oh, thank you. So now we're talking, thank you, a 9% over 5 years. And so remember, when we talked about the goals, we needed to be able to, we said we wanted to make sure that they were attainable, that we could resource them. They would require adult behavior change. So that to me is, so is it a stretch? Are we challenging ourselves? And so that's the discussion you need to have based on this. And I think we absolutely have to take in our recommendation from the experts in the room as well, because they're sitting in the, in our seats. Did you have a?
I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
Because I think that what the board might be thinking is, wow, that's not a lot. But I wanted to mention some of the other things that we talked about in regards to how we still focus on the growth measure part of it. Mm-hmm. So we're still looking for growth for all our students. And that's also what's very important to our district and what has been so helpful for our teachers, for our ratings, because we use that growth measure for everything based on their evaluations, on teacher incentive allotment. So that growth measure is really important. So I don't want the board to see that and think, oh, well, that's all you're going to do, because there's still the growth measure part that we do focus on. So I don't know, Ceci, if you want to add.
So to expand on that a little bit, this goal is written strictly to measure student achievement. Mm-hmm. And that is one of 3 domains of accountability. Student achievement is what the state says. The state says this. They need a 70 to pass. It's not a 70, it's a different score, but I'm just using that as an example. But then the state also acknowledges that for many of our students, they might not meet that 70% because they're coming into school maybe at a performance of a 30. Mm-hmm. And so the state says, you know what, that's student achievement domain 1, but we're going to allow the districts to use their best of student achievement or student progress. And so the accountability scores that every district receives and every campus receives has been their best, whether they were able to attain student achievement at the arbitrary score the state sets, or whether they're able to show that the student grew from one grade to the next and made considerable progress. Here at Judson ISD, our accountability scores as a district and by all of the campuses have been reached not through the student achievement component by itself, but it's been through the progress. And so when you think about also how the state asks us to evaluate our teachers through the growth component, how the teachers are asked to evaluate the students through the growth component, then our suggestion was to make an alignment between what the state says we should evaluate our teachers on, what our teachers should be evaluating our students on, so that there's an alignment in the data piece. So just, you're focusing on the student achievement piece, but please know that there's a whole other trail going on over here on the progress. And then that progress is even broken down further by just growth from one year to the next and comparison from our district to districts that are similar. And so those are just the changes.
But for 3rd grade, is there a growth measure? Because they haven't taken STAR before.
No. Right.
There isn't a growth measure for 3rd grade.
Okay.
But if you were to choose a different grade level, like 3rd through 4th, you could measure the progress 4th, 5th, 6th, and so on. So as in 3rd grade, yes, we are just taking a look at that. But there is a progress that we measure internally using a state benchmark, which is our amplifier, which is similar to the data that I presented to the board last year. So we will have our boy data for all of our 3rd graders, and internally we're going to have our own progress measures to see what growth we're using on our students from third grade beginning of year to third grade of middle of year, which we're scheduled to report to you all. And then middle of year to end of year. So from the STAR level, there's that piece, but from the state recommended benchmark, there's the growth measure.
And so I just want to make sure that so in domain 1, we're talking about achievement, which is what this goal is based on, third grade achievement. The progress measures that you're talking about that show growth can be progress measures. They are predictive of this goal, of this achievement goal. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So if the growth goals that we want to measure or the progress that you're talking about, those could be measured through progress goals, right? They're interim assessments, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. So the board could still see the data, and that data would be predictive of this achievement goal. Am I correct? In theory?
In theory, because the state is recognizing that might not be the best measure, but yes, in theory, yes.
But it is, domain 1 is an achievement domain
You are correct.
at the state level.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
And when you're saying achievement, you're talking about meets grade level, or you're talking about also approaches grade level?
Either one, they're both achievement.
So the 40% that's recommended is meets grade level. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Part of the reason why 57 was put on the table was because we made a very hefty investment in pre-K3 and pre-K4, which means we have kids that are supposed to be starting out of the gate a lot more prepared. And as a result, we should see that investment yield very quick results in third grade. No, quick in a 5-year span is what I mean. So if we've done our best to get kids out of the gate well, they should be performing well at first grade, even better at second grade, which means we should see that finally be measured in third grade. So that's why the number came up in the 57th percentile, because it was like, if we've made this investment, when are we going to see the results of that investment?
I think if it was a normal year, we would probably see the investment quicker. But when you think about it, and I don't remember who shared with me today, there's truly been some students that are third graders right now, and they haven't been in school since first grade.
And I will add,
But 5 years from now,
that's exactly
they will
right.
have had a
Yes.
more standard.
And we're talking about today's pre-K3, pre-K4 that are coming in. And secondly, I conceded the fact that that number could be applicable to only those that went through pre-K3, pre-K4. I can respect the fact that if they didn't come in and they jumped in second grade or third grade, they would impact our numbers, but we could disaggregate that to kind of get a better benchmark. And I think that's a fair thing to do.
Except that those students right now who started with us pre-K3, which was our first year last year, won't be part of this.
They'll be in second grade.
Right.
5 years.
So
But the
in
pre-K
5
4
years,
is-
So pre-K4, whatever we need to make it work, but the intent is that investment and what the expectation would be for shifting a lot of our strategy behind that investment.
So I think your goal on number 5 would be indicative of that, but still even.
The
your
kindergarten
grade
ready.
Won't actually be reached until 5 years from now to read third grade.
So I think we have a goal of trying to address the efficacy of the pre-K program.
And just so I understand it, so if we did a 6-year goal, 57% would be viable? Because you're saying 40% because it's within that 5, because pre-K3 is not part of that thing. But would I expect that on the 6th year, that next group of third graders to be at 57%? Based on that,
Based on that, the current pre-K3 are right now in pre-K4.
Because I would certainly take a 6-year goal of getting to 57 if that's what that. But I basically we just all need to challenge ourselves and of course ask from the board what do we need to make that happen. I personally think our decision to have pre-K3 and pre-K4 is affirmative that we should expect better results.
And I would agree. However, just as we're looking at the numbers right now of our enrollment of pre-K 3 and pre-K 4, we're not looking at every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in Judson ISD being enrolled in that program. So to say that a whole cohort of kids are going to move and show that level of performance is saying that every child that could be in pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 are enrolled in pre-K 3 and 4. Does that make sense? Which is why we're doing it right now, because what's happening is that parents are choosing in some cases, not enrolling their kids even in kindergarten and bringing them in first grade. So even coming in just at first grade, we're already seeing the significant gaps in performance because they don't have to come to kinder. So offering pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 is the intent that we're going to be able to capture more kids and not just try to wait until the parents have to bring them in first grade, which way they are compelled to start their kids in school. Does that make sense? So we're not really capturing all of our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. And so the data that we're going to be trying to prove is you have to look at the entire cohort, not just the ones that enrolled in pre-K 3 and pre-K 4.
I would hope that you look at all of them.
Yeah, we are looking at the whole cohort, but to say that we're going to jump to 57%.
From a real accountability standpoint, I can't make the superintendent accountable for 57% of those students she never touched in pre-K 3 and 4. So I can only do that for those students that went through the program, and we should be able to monitor and see where their progress has been. That way it validates the investment that we have in our pre-K programming. That's all I'm saying. We can internalize it and make it our own. Naturally, all students need to be impacted based on the paper report.
But I guess I'm getting a little confused because this one talks about third grade students.
Right.
But are we trying to change it?
I'm just saying that it doesn't have to. It can be adjusted to be indicative of only those that went through, if obviously my colleagues agree. But
No, we already have have one that looks just at our
If you were to adjust this to
then
only measure the kids who have gone through the pre-K program, then you're really not, I mean, you have to be responsible for all third graders regardless,
and that's
right?
a good question. That's a very fair question about if we're going to then take into account those students that did not join our pre-K 3 and 4, what that measurable goal would be. Obviously, I, as a board member, would like to still see what our participation looked like in pre-K 3 and 4 and what the yield was at third grade,
right,
and so on. But that is a fair question.
And I think that could be a progress measure too, so you could be tracking every year. You could be tracking just the kids who, we're going to track all of our kids, but then we're also going to break it out, and we're not going to be, I think that's the other thing, that we could break out the ones who have attended Judson's pre-K program so that you can see the efficacy. The challenge will be that we don't have that data in the past, so we're going to create that data system moving forward because our kids weren't coded in the right way, that way to get it. But I think you're right. I think it's a really important component to check. But on this goal, I think we have to roll those kids up into this cohort. And so then if we have, a group of kids who haven't been able to attend pre-K, what is a feasible goal for that whole cohort? And so what your leaders are saying is that 57, which really would be 52 if we were to go back just with your basis on your percentage, is unattainable. That's what they're saying. That one is beyond, and when I remember when we talked about this, is you can set the goal wherever you want. But first of all, what we're doing is trying to create the conditions for success for our superintendent and our leadership team. Second of all, we only have so much money. We only have so many resources, right? And so, if you set a goal that's very high and you don't resource it, then you haven't created the conditions for success. So we have to think about that when we're addressing this. Like, is there a place that you feel, all of you feel, is somewhere between the 40 and the 51 that fits.
What I might offer is, like, is to everybody, this is, I'm not like trying to like make a point to anybody in particular, but to me, hearing the context that you all have shared, like the 40, so I think about goals as like, let's set goals that are ambitious and feasible. And the 40 feels feasible, but not ambitious. The 57 feels ambitious, but not feasible. And so, and hearing what you said about, like, it'll probably take 5 years to get to pre-pandemic levels. Our pre-pandemic level for third grade meets was 42.
Yeah.
The state average was 45. And so, to me, I might suggest 45 as, like, an ambitious and feasible option.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well said, Jennifer. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with both of you all, however, what I'm concerned about is our our pre-K3 program kicked in for this year, right? Okay, so your concern, Mr. Macias, is return on investment. I hear what you're saying. What is going to be, how are we tracking the return on investment of us initiating this pre-K3? So those kids, hopefully, the ones that started this year, will go through 3, 4, kinder, and then continue with us to third grade. So actually, that's when we'll be able to see what the impact of having started at 3 and getting to third. That's when we'll be able to see the impact. So this follows that 5-year plan perfectly, because we'll be able to actually look at data that says that little Johnny started with us at pre-K3, and he outscored little Johnny number 1 that went through just kinder, first, second, and third grade. We'll be able to actually look at the data and see that it helped him tremendously, or it didn't. Maybe it didn't, but what you're saying is right. That, when we made that decision last night, because Mr. Macias and I were looking at that, we were looking at where we were pre-pandemic. This thing has really thrown a wrench in everything, and I understand that for somebody who has not been in the classroom and not been so exposed to the children and how they come about these grades. Now, what I was wondering was, when you were talking about state, no, Ms. Taganoff, right?
Ms. Davis.
Ms. Davis. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Taggart. I am so sorry. That's why you didn't say nothing to me when I said hi to the baby. Okay, I am so sorry. Okay, I know you think I'm crazy now. Okay.
Hard with math.
I apologize. I mixed you up with Ms. Taganoff, but this is what I was wondering. The state number here, is this a roll-up of all third graders in the state of Texas, or is this a recommendation that's being presented to the districts that this is the level that you should be at?
From the paper report that you all were reading last night, which is the pre-pandemic report, this is
It's actual.
Average.
Okay.
So when I say average, from all districts, so it's an average.
Okay. See, that I had that number, the way I was looking at that number was wrong. Okay, thank you.
But to Ms. Eaton's point, I think she made a good point. That average, not that average, but that number is pre-pandemic. I wish that we had our taper report from now that we won't be getting until November, because I think that data would be valuable for us.
But that's what the 31 is, right?
Well, it's an estimate.
Yeah.
Estimate of what it's going to be.
It's an estimate. So that could, you correct me, it could be 1 or 2 points different when we get the actual report.
Because, and that's from last night, that's an estimate based on the fact that not all students took the STAR test,
That's
right?
true.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
why we have an estimate, and that's why it's not counting this year, right?
My third grader did not take the STAR test.
Yes.
So when you add that.
And lots of others did not.
Yeah.
Right.
Because our participation percentage this past school year was the lowest I've ever seen in Judson ISD.
Well, it was
So,
everywhere.
a lot, but it was across the state,
Oh, yeah.
across the state. So the majority of our kids did not test.
Yeah, 'cause my daughter, she wouldn't let my grandson go either. She's like, I done kept him out a year and a half, and you want me to take it one day and let him get the crap and, you know.
And plus, our commissioners told parents that they didn't have to come. They didn't
Right.
have to test.
So he didn't take it either,
Yeah.
for 7:30.
Well, let me add this though, because, I'm sorry, Ms. Eden.
I'm sorry.
Are you good? Are you finished?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Didn't want to interrupt you. But the situation is this, that as Ms. Duhart-Toppin had kind of mentioned about all students, the other emphasis is that we've made the investment in pre-K 3 and 4, but we also must develop strategies for addressing students that come in a highly mobile district to address those first graders and second graders to get them up to par. We can't, so in conjunction with the investment in pre-K 3 and 4, I'm anticipating we're going to have increased strategies to address those students that come in first and second grade, so they're ready in third grade, which should lend itself to still a more ambitious goal, as Ms. Rodriguez had mentioned, 40% being in the middle of that. So my hope would be that we've identified some strategies, and we have ESSER funds, federal dollars, that are designed to help us bring more to the table. And there's $3 million, I think I saw in our ESSER fund budget that I asked Dr. Ball to present, that's dealing with social emotional, which that also addresses social emotional first grade and second grade. I'm just telling you, there are a lot of things in the plate that will help us increase, or should, if done efficiently, increase results.
And I have no doubt that it will. It's just a matter that it's going to take time.
Well, and that's where there's 5 years. And again, I told you, and on record again, I'm happy with you as superintendent. Certainly, we want to continue to work together to get there. But we need to set a nice benchmark to say this is where we want to go.
And we're okay with 45.
Yeah.
We're okay.
And I can imagine us
Okay.
setting intervals that are smaller at the beginning, because let's face it, this year is also not easy.
Right.
There are no substitutes to be had, that's gonna be
Yeah.
teacher burnout, like, I get it, but that, once that all the things that we've put in place begin to take their effect, then, we might see a larger jump in the last year or so of the plan.
Okay, good. So we've got a 45, which is getting us back to the state average, pre-pandemic.
Over the state average a little bit, but yes, pre-pandemic.
You what?
It's getting us over the state average.
Over the state average, all right. So are we okay with moving forward with that as our target? And does that feel, experts, attainable but a challenge?
Yes.
Not an unreasonable challenge. I'm asking the question.
It will definitely be a challenge.
Okay.
When principals look at this and teachers look at this, it'll be a challenge, but we're definitely going to set some measures in place to help more students grow.
Okay.
We can rise up to the challenge.
Okay. All right.
I really think that with where we were, hello? Do I sound different? I really think that where we were before the pandemic, that even with the after-school programs that you guys have set up and all the extra help, the bringing in the extra RTIs and stuff, that it's gonna, if we can just get this stuff under control and the kids can get to school, that once, we get going with it, the initial is gonna be a big jump. And then we'll level off and be able to do the 2 to 3% gradual increase over the 5 years. But I think that initially, it's gonna be a nice little jump because the kids are excited. They wanna be back in school. They wanna not just see their friends, but they miss their teachers. They really do.
Well, and I will say, and I think all of us recognize this, but I think it needs to be said, is that nobody knows. Because nobody's had to recover from a pandemic. So we don't know, right? So we are setting a goal this is where we'd like to be, right? This is our goalpost, recognizing that boy, we don't know what the journey's going to look like quite yet, so.
And I wanted to point, I know that I asked my colleagues what separated you from Lone Star Governance or any other group, and that was the equity discussion. And the fact you had some emphasis, I think Ms. Rodriguez had mentioned that. So in terms of this evaluation that we're looking at now, we need to look at equity because we also know that the southern part of our district, Kirby, Woodlake, they're going to need more resources to get to that level. That 45% average, it could all be in Kitty Hawk, and if we're building a new middle school in the next 5 years, it could be at that new middle school on the north side. So when we look at this from an equity lens now, I'd like to know if we then incorporate a secondary, a part A, that, you know, Kirby is at a certain point, Woodlake is at a certain point, Metzger is at a certain point. So we have an overall 45, but we would have to evaluate then those individual campuses as well to ensure that the right progress is equitable across the district.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Ms. Davis actually has that.
Yeah.
And I just do not remember, Mr. Macias, if you were on the board at that time when she did it specifically by campus, but we could definitely bring it back up again.
Under this discussion though?
Under the goal that we had, so then now we'll take this goal and do it by campus.
Okay.
So we can track, because that, you're right, it does affect how you might resource, and now
Well,
you
and
might.
that's part of the strategies and the monitoring that we do, because you can't get to it as a whole in the district if the individual campuses aren't there. So that's something that I assumed, maybe, would already be part of when we build in those benchmarks. Not only do you look at it district-wide, but that you look at individual campuses. So the ones that are struggling, yes, then you bring in more and go above and beyond.
Because in a perfect equitable situation, I could expect every campus to be at 45%, but that's not going to be the case.
No.
So we certainly want to look at what we need to do to get that campus as close to that goal, knowing that Kitty Hawk and the other middle school may be at 55%.
Which is also why we would disaggregate them by student populations, so that we know if you guys saw the lines, right, the charts. And so if we know that our Latinx children are not reaching the mark as quickly, what kind of resources do we need to put in front of our children to make sure we're closing those gaps? Because that was something you all talked about, is how are we closing the gaps on all of these goals? So we'll talk about that, which is also a growth indicator, right? So I think we can disaggregate it so that we are really having all that data in front of us, and that's what the richness of having this framework is to have this data in front of you in order to make the decisions that you need to make as a board.
And so we would need to add it then under these preliminary goals?
No, because we'll add it into the progress measures and they'll be disaggregated already. Yes, ma'am.
And just so the board knows, once these are approved by the board and these are officials, then our plan is to take these to the campuses, share that with the administrators, share that with their leadership team, and build their goals off of this information for us to be able to meet that. So it's all part of the site-based management, campus improvement plan cycle, district improvement plan cycle, that we'll be using this information. So I don't know if that helps, but I just wanted to share.
It does, and since I'm a for the record type of person, I want to say this too for any of our educators and professionals that are listening. I wouldn't expect any of our teachers or campuses to make goals if they didn't feel supported or get the support that they needed. We can't put goals up and then not offer any support to our professionals to get the job done. So my expectation is that we would support them. And again, I'm saying this more for the record because I want to be clear. I'm not just saying Jose Macias and my colleagues, we want this. It's all of us. We want to support that growth, and we're willing, at least I'm willing to see that through.
And for the record too, you know, we've already been talking, so in the next month, I'm already coming to the board with the things that we're going to need, because these are big goals, and I'm not about to fail, so.
Sure.
Okay.
And it's not lost on us either that, like, it feels uncomfortable to have top-down mandates come through, and like, that applies to you all sitting here, but also then all the way down to teachers and everybody who is a part of that. And so I love that that's going to be brought to the campuses to help them decide, like, what's the part we're going to take on, like, what role do we play in this? and that they have some autonomy in how they are contributing to the bigger whole of the program.
And really what this, I mean, as opposed to feeling like a top-down mandate, what I hope it feels like is a goalpost that doesn't move on you. You know, how about a goalpost that just stands still for a little while so you can build the strategies and have the freedom to execute under your expertise to get there.
Instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater every year
Right.
and starting over. And I do also want to say that I have faith in our educators. We have amazing teachers. And yes, I know that they're tired from last year and this year, but I have no doubt that they want every child to succeed and they want every child to attain that growth that they're due and that they'll work really hard to get this done. But it's also not a gotcha.
Right.
And I want to stress that too. We're not going to come back in 5 years and say, oh, y'all are all fired because you didn't make this goal. That is not what this is about. It's about working together in the district to move forward in critical areas that the board has said, this is what we think is going to make the district better. And not just us on our own. Looking at the data, you know, it's all fact-based that we can go back and point to. It's not just pulling something out of the air.
Right.
I was sharing with Mr. Macias when we were going through this last night. One of my neighbors, the little guy, he's at Candlewood, 5th grade. He's in 5th grade, and his dad doesn't speak any English at all, and his mother speaks very little, but enough to get by. So from the time he gets out of school on Friday till he goes back on Monday, except for when he comes over to talk to me, and he comes and talks to me just to speak English. So he spends all weekend speaking Spanish. And he gets frustrated because I was sharing with Mr. Macias that he brings books home and he's excited about it, and he gets to read it to me in English, but his mom wants him to translate it and read it to her in Spanish. And he, you know, I don't know what to do other than I talk to him so he can keep using his English.
Right.
You know, I don't know how often that problem presents itself to y'all, but, you know.
All the way through high school.
He's an emergent bilingual.
If you don't
Yes.
mind, can you get you some extra books, so when he does go over?
Well, you remember I asked you, why did the librarian stop giving us books? Because I would always give them to him after I read them to my grandbaby.
Yeah.
And he be asking me, he's like, Miss Eaton, where's the book?
We're gonna get you some.
So I buy him books now for the cold with the stuffed animal.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move us to, because I don't want to keep these ladies all night long. They've had a long day. I want to move us to the math one. So we adjusted the baseline. I think before our baseline we had there was 22, so we didn't adjust that much. And we had a goal of 55. We have a recommendation of 30. So how are we feeling? Math, we know, is a little harder to move, but want to have that same dialogue that we just had around math and see if we can get to a number, because 55 feels pretty unattainable.
So just to put this in context, and Ceci, check my numbers if I'm correct. In 2019, we were at 41, and that was pre-COVID. So going to 55 with knowing where we are now seems almost unattainable, I'll be honest.
Okay, so we have 30.
So those are
is
my 2 cents.
recommended. We had 41, you say?
It was 46% on third grade math, right? So it's 46% that meets grade level.
It was 46.
46.
46. Okay, thank you.
Or at least that's what's on here.
Yeah, on our paper.
Sorry, on 2019
Yeah, pre-pandemic.
was 19%, and then 2020.
That's the 7th grade, we're looking at 3rd grade
Oh,
math.
sorry.
No, it's
3rd grade.
Yeah, that's the one that choked me. I couldn't understand why it went down like that. Okay.
Okay, so last time you looked at a little bit of, what's the state average pre-pandemic?
49%.
I'm looking at 2019.
And 45 for Region
was it?
20.
46
Yeah.
to 29.
45 for what?
Region 20. And
But the state
49 for
was
the
at
state.
49. So we were only 3 points behind the state back. And,
Okay,
surpassed.
so we have, I don't know if you guys can even see these numbers.
It was 46?
So we're looking at kind of a range here. We've got our recommendation by our leaders, we've got where we were, where the board originally based their goal on without, and then the region and the state. So, is there somewhere in between here that we can all feel is attainable but a stretch?
What is the snapshot of this for last year? I know it didn't count, but what's the snapshot? Like we have
The 21.
The 21.
oh, God. Oh, yeah.
We're starting at 21.
Where we're really at right now as of May. And
Okay.
see, that's the paper report you don't have, so the data that you have, yeah, it's 21% at May.
Wow. So, yeah, we're asking for a big jump. Fairy godmother was coming.
So, and I guess I would ask too, like, what investments have you made into early math?
I have to be honest and say not as many as we have for early literacy.
Right. So
And I
we
know
need-
that a lot of the math now is reading, the word problems and
Right.
everything, but we have not made as big an investment. We today talked about some good strategies.
Right.
And investment things, but,
So we need to take that into account.
Right.
We've invested in early literacy, not as much in early math. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be investments made, right? But those take time. Investments take time to, implement and to see results. So how are you feeling about a number, a target for this goal?
Well, yesterday, Ms. Canoia she brought up a very good point that with the math, it's more difficult to make those movements because it requires so much more, it's more intense than with the literacy. So I'm inclined to go with the district, to adjust my number down some, because we were one of the groups that had the big number.
So you're inclined to go with the 30?
Yes. Or at least, 30, 35.
Does anybody feel strongly differently?
I would argue again that we should aim for pre-pandemic levels within the next 5 years, which would be 46.
46?
And this is third grade math we're talking about, right?
Yes.
And that seems to be where we are. And we have our taper report that shows pre-pandemic 2018 and 2019. But I also have the 2017. In 2017, we were at 47%. So we've stayed between 47 and 44% pre-pandemic.
So we haven't really grown.
Yeah, exactly, which is the point. We need to do better. And so now we took a hit this year with the pandemic, and everyone has done so. So as we establish our goals, we should be able to get to where we were before pre-pandemic, and again, within 5 years. I'm not saying that we need to do this year over year. It is a 5-year target. So we're going to see some adversity as we go through the first year, second year, third year. But clearly by year 4 or 5, I would imagine we're getting closer to that goal. And so I would also agree with Ms. Rodriguez, we need to make that a little bit more of a challenge, especially since we've been through 47 and 44% pre-pandemic.
Okay, so it sounds like, and I want the rest of the board members to weigh in, because everybody's voice counts in this, that we're landing somewhere between 30 and 46. So we have the high end at 46. We have 30 as a recommendation. Trustee Eaton agrees with that recommendation. How are the rest of you? That I haven't heard from? I'd love to hear from you guys.
I mean, of course, you want to see a certain challenge. You want to see the best. But, are you guys able to get them higher than 30%?
That's what we will always strive for. We will always strive to give them the best. I just, in my experience, even when we don't have typical challenges, a 3% raise per year is still a lofty and a stretch goal each and every time. And so, definitely at the mercy of the board, but that was why we had that recommendation.
Sure.
Right, and it's just not a recommendation that we just pulled out of our hats.
No.
It comes from things that we've heard from the commissioner, things that we've read in regards to coming out of crisis and pandemics, is how difficult it is. And you know really well what our kids are coming with.
15.
And also just keeping in mind that we're still looking at the STAR math test, which has evolved from what our summative tests have looked like in the past. In the past, our summative tests have looked like just basic arithmetic. Now, it truly is a reading test. So they have to be able to master a reading test and be able to identify what it is they're asking them to solve. So it truly is a multi-step, multi-process. So it's not just evaluating math, which is why our math scores across the state are lower.
So,
And lower than
so before pre-pandemic, the recommendation was about 3% growth, 2 to 3% a year, right? That's a feasible growth. If you got into 5%, you were really kind of pushing pretty hard. That was pre-pandemic. If we were to do a 3% growth over 5 years, that's 15 points. That puts this number at a 36, which is not the 46 that we had before. I grant it. It's not the 30 that we walked in with. So do we feel that's a stretch? Not enough a stretch? How are you feeling? Yeah, I haven't heard from you tonight.
Right, and I was just going to say, my input is that I want us to be realistic. I do want it to be feasible. And if our leaders recommend what would be somewhere between 30-35%, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Trustee Diaz?
My main concern is that it's realistic.
Yeah,
I think that's the way they're looking at it.
Yeah, that's the same with me as well. You know, it has to be feasible.
Right.
It's a lot going on right now. I just want to make sure that they're able to get, reach that goal though. And I know that it's not the best, of course, but is it feasible during this time? There's a lot going on.
So it's a tension between feasible and challenging, because we want adult behavior change. We want to create change. We want to say, you're going to have to create some new strategies, right? That's what you guys are doing, are pushing. Hadn't heard from you tonight. Trustee Diaz? Thoughts? Not to put you on the...
Can y'all get to 30?
That's the most reasonable one, is to try to get to 30.
If you can get to 30.
I mean, isn't
Pushing.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy to get to 30.
It's still lofty.
I know it's.
And the other thing is, Mr. Diaz, is that the strategies that were put in place for literacy, there's not the same type strategies for math. So that's another thing, that's another challenge, is putting in math strategies that are going to be accessible to the 30%.
So here's where I'm struggling with. I guess that was one of my questions there. Can you get to 30? The answer is yeah, I don't want to see it up there, right? Because I feel like it's not a good place to start, right? So I'm unsure. So can you get to 30?
It's not going to be easy to get to 30.
You can get to 30. You feel confident you can get to 30?
No.
So here's the thing about math and about reading. Once they master that basic phonemic awareness, decoding kind of thing, You do the same thing over and over at a higher reading level. Math is completely different because there are discrete skills and concepts that are taught at every grade level. And if you miss out on that, then there has to be backfilling that has to be done before that they can build on it. This last year and this year, we have kids going in and out for lots of reasons. Virtual did not work for every kid. I don't know how you can do concrete manipulatives when they're on the other side of a computer at these low grades. So we are going to have a lot of work to do to backfill to get them back to a pre-pandemic level. And that is probably, I would think, going to take more than the 5 years to get back there, just because of the nature of the beast. And so I'm very reluctant to set a really high goal in math, knowing how it works.
I would agree if it was any other grade but third grade. For seventh grade, like, I'm not gonna push hard on that one, but like, for third grade, those kids are literally entering school right now. And they're in person. And so they
Some of them are, but they're still, so many of them are having to go home and quarantine, and we're not doing virtual for them now.
But
they're going to have to do a packet of work. You know.
And we have to expect that kids in kindergarten, when, like, that's all we can expect. The kids start in kindergarten with us. If we get pre-K, that's bonus time, you know? And
Well,
so,
first grade, actually, because a lot of them are keeping kinder home.
But that's next year's problem.
But it affects.
I feel like 30 is really, really low.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at, right? I'm actually even more saddened that we're in this position, even removing COVID from the situation, that the numbers are what they are, and that they haven't been monitored. I gotta say that as a parent, right? So.
That the board hasn't monitored, because the district has.
That the board has. Absolutely. This falls on the board. Right, all of us. So, I'm actually super disheartened by it, because we put ourselves in a position where a wheel falls off, and the whole car is like jammed.
So can I put it in perspective? I'm looking at numbers from 2019, 2020, at our districts that are comparable districts that are around us. Okay, so if you look around at our comparable districts, we were at 46, they were at 47. This is pre-COVID. So putting that number in perspective, that if the districts that we're competing against, that we're measuring ourselves against, which we don't really supposed to, but we do it anyway, and what parents are looking at, they were at 47% in third grade math pre-COVID. So when you talk about the differences between reading and math, it's a different ball game when you come to math. And then you add on top of that the fact that it's a reading test now. So we have kids sitting on campus right now that are going to struggle not only with just math, they're going to struggle with reading. And it's going to have a bigger impact on math than it is reading. Because we're not only looking at, can you read the problem, but can you solve, do the computation as well. So the math issue is not just a Judson ISD issue, it is a statewide issue, because even the state was only at 49% in third grade math. And when you change the test, where you add reading component and when you add stimulus to the test, kids have to be taught how to read charts as well as how to read word problems.
Thank you for bringing
at 8 years old.
I'd like to let Ms. Eaton go before I make my comment,
Yeah.
because she had been waiting.
Well,
She was waving at me and I missed her.
Sorry, Ms. Eaton.
What I was looking at, is that, we had a greater than 50% decrease because of this current situation. Because we went all the way down, our hypothetical number there is the 21%. So we had a greater than 50% decrease because we were at 45 post pandemic. So I can see where it is gonna take us time to get back, at least get back to where we were. So my question is, what can we do? What assistance can we give for additional programs, people? What can we do as a board to help us get on back up there, you know? Because the bottom line is we have to get them back up there.
Right.
So, because, you know, we can keep talking about drop, the fall, the difference, but what can we do to
Right.
solve the problem?
So,
Yeah.
let's get,
those strategies.
And we are
And-
gonna be bringing some in October.
yeah,
Okay.
so
We
let's
are.
get a goal
Yes.
on the books, and we're gonna get those strategies underneath it, so that
There we
we're
go,
gonna be.
strategies. I like that.
I think that, you know, for me, and especially last night, because I think I was a lot more quiet last night, it is really hard to say 30%. You know, it is really hard to say that, because then whose child am I letting fail? Your child, you know, it's like, you know, so it's really hard. I think that what I could definitely agree to, but it is a lofty, hard goal, but I will agree to the 35, if the board could agree to the 35.
And I think to your point, and it's important to state this too, not that you don't all know this, but we're always striving for 100%.
Always.
They're always striving for 100%. You all absolutely want 100%. But we know if we set that 100% goal, we're not going to hit that in 5 years, right? So let's set some tangible goals that we can actually build strategies towards. Next 5 years, we go, you know, even higher, right? Now we got systems in place. So I think that's important. So we got 35 that the district feels like they could, that's a reach, it's a stretch, we're stretching them. We're poking them. How does the board feel about that? That's closer to the 3% each year for 5 years. We know we're not going to get 3% probably this year, right? Because we're still adjusting. So there's going to have to be bigger growth in the later years.
Right, and that's what actually stresses me out, you know, because I think there isn't going to be a lot, because I know what's going on, you know, with the kids. I see so many absences. I see, and there's nothing we can really do, because I don't want them to come to school sick either.
Right.
The teachers are sick, the teacher shortage, all of those things. I'm thinking then that makes like for 5-6% growth all the years after this, which is really, really a stretch.
Right. So I have 35. You guys were our stretchers. So how are you feeling after this dialogue about that number? I mean, I'm not saying that you're happy with the number. Couldn't you live with it?
My number was 46, going back to pre-pandemic levels. Because the kids that, again, and I'm not gonna be the one to hold this all up, but again, the kids who are going to contribute to that in the year 2026, some of them have not entered school and wouldn't have entered school whether there was a pandemic or not, right? They are 4 years old right now. And so we have the potential to reset with that particular group in a way that is not going to be reflected in the rest of the kids that coming up. That might not, I think we have the potential to see a big jump doing exactly what we've done for every year leading up before the pandemic. We just need to do what we've done and...
But we didn't see those jumps in the years before the
No,
pandemic.
it's not jumps. I'm not talking about jumps. I'm saying giving the kids the education from kindergarten through 3rd grade that we have given kids in kindergarten through 3rd grade for however long our district has existed. And we have gotten those results. That's the logic in my brain that is not being overcome yet.
Can I bring up one more point?
Yeah.
We're going to be asking our teachers to focus in 2 areas with new strategies and new things to attempt to do, because let's face it, our pre-K through 3rd grade generally are self-contained classrooms. The kids don't switch out. So I'm the teacher, I'm teaching reading and I'm teaching math. So now I'm coming in with new strategies I have to learn to teach my kids and focus on for reading, and a whole nother set of strategies I have to focus on and learn for math. Not to mention, I still have to do writing, I still have to do social studies, I still have to do science. Got to fit art in there somewhere, because we don't have art teachers. So, computer skills, let's don't forget that. So, what are we doing to the teachers, too, to make it attainable for our staff and not overwhelming for our staff? So I just want to point that out, too. It's not like we're only looking at the 7th grade math teachers. That's different. They got one subject to focus on. Our elementary teachers focus on way more than one.
So would our investment reflect that reality for those educators? I mean, I guess, wouldn't it?
There is support there, but how many trainings can I go to and come back and implement and do it effectively?
Is that that's one of our questions now.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Is that the only lever?
Is training the only lever?
No. Mm-mm.
I think that has to drive the goal, right? Which is, yes, under current circumstances, with current conditions, unattainable. However, because of this, there has to be more levers to get pulled. We just have to be told what they are.
Well, and to your point, I mean, look, we could be doing the same thing that we've been doing, or we could say, that ain't working. There are strategies. ACE strategies, other strategies that do move kids faster. They cost money. They're harder to implement. So I guess that's my point, too. If we set a goal at a much higher level, then there's going to have to be structural changes that may cost a lot of money. We have seen success in that area in 3rd grade with putting, our best teachers in front of our kids who need it, paying our teachers more for that duty, there's a lot of strategies around there. I'm not the expert, so I wouldn't dictate what those strategies were, but
it's also not just 3rd grade teachers that we're looking at. We have to look at what's happening in kinder, what's happening in 1st grade, what's happening in 2nd grade, so that we can build, so that when they get to 3rd grade, then they are at this level.
Absolutely.
So then it's also a deployment for the district, which is I've done professional development and things like that, and it's challenging.
It's a student achievement goal,
right?
Right? We're focusing on student achievement. The strategies, the inputs to get there belong to these guys, right? So what we're focused on in this room is, what is the goal that gives them, what are we doing? We're setting a goal, and then how are we creating the conditions for success, right? So if you give them a goal that they can't reach, then we're not creating, then we own it. We own the failure. So that's all I'm saying, is when we think about this, we have to think about what that goal is. But it is not your job to worry necessarily, except to resource it, is how we get there. You're saying, we need you to get here. Tell us what you need to get here, right? So I'm just saying, when we look at this gap, because right now we're at a 10-point gap. 10 points is 3 years at 3%. It's a big gap. It's a big gap between where we are and where we need to be.
My assessment is similar to Ms. Rodriguez. If we've been there before, we should be able to get there again within 5 years. I know year over year is going to be difficult, and I've stated that. 2 years will be difficult, 3. But Ms. Rodriguez's point of the students being new, going through our process, is I think, very appropriate. So we shouldn't lower our targets. Our community expects us to produce excellence. As a board member, I expect us to produce excellence. And as a result, because this group is unique, where they're starting in kinder, and we're already putting resources out there, I think we can expect to see at least the same growth we saw 2017 through 2019. I don't think that's too far. I don't know if there's, again, since I'm not in the trenches and I'm not in that area, I don't know where the barrier, I would ask the question, not why we can't get there, but how can we get there, period. And as Ms. Eaton said, if it requires resources, propose those resources it's viable. It could even be a classroom aide in every classroom, 2 classroom aides in every classroom. We need to be able to put the investment forward to make this a reality. And I've never had anyone in the community tell me, darn it, my kid's so educated, you spend too much money on them. They will support that effort if it makes sense. We have a lot of ESSER funds, which again are to help us get our kids to grade level. So we have an influx of cash that is supposed to be utilized for this. And so I just can't see why we can't at least get to pre-pandemic. It's hard to even say we're not striving for more, but get there first and then move forward.
Okay, so let's do this, because I feel like we're kind of in an impasse on this one, but we're going to come back to it. We're going to go to the next one. We're going to go to the CCMR one and see if we have some space in there. So we're tabling it. I'm taking what you guys, we're going to keep this conversation, but just in case we can move forward, let's try the CCMR. So CCMR was at 50%, or that's where it was, that's the 2021 numbers, correct?
Yes.
2020.
And we had a 25-point gain, percentage point gain, and the district is recommending a 15% gain, which is 3% each year. And so I know you guys had some thought process behind that, so I'd love to hear you share that with the board, please.
So one of the things that I didn't know yesterday is that the indicators for CCMR has changed. So knowing that part, that's also a little worrisome.
So I have slides on that if it's helpful.
So before CCMR would count, we would get a 0.5 point for students that were in the coherent sequence for CTE. And so that would bump us up a little bit because we're a huge district for CTE, all of our career technology courses, and we have pathways and programs of studies at every high school, and we really start trying to get the kids enrolled in CTE as an 8th grader and then continue that progress. So it wasn't hard for us to get that. The state has removed that. So we will no longer get that extra 0.5 point for every kid that's enrolled in the CTE course coherently. The other thing that's been taken off the table is military. So we got points for every kid that enlisted in the military as part of CCMR. So we also have the college part of it, which is the ACT, SAT, AP classes, IB, dual credit, all of that. But in addition, we would get an extra bump because we were so big in our CTE program here in Judson. And then we are a military community, so a lot of our kids would enlist during their senior year. So those 2 pieces have been removed by the state because the military is waiting to give us their ruling on how we can count that. And so right now, we're not going to be able to use that for our accountability this year, those 2 pieces. So that's going to be huge for us.
So that's going to make those.
Included on this, right? On the 50%, so, or no?
I have a quick handout. Is that okay, Dr. Paul?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry.
And Ms. Dr. Duhart-Toppin, if
Thank you.
that same kiddo that decides that they're going to join the military that we can't count, but they've registered for the Alamo Promise to say they're going to go do a career or college, would it count as a college enrollment at that time?
It will count if they meet the TSIA requirement for them to go into Alamo Promise. Because even though we're doing Alamo Promise as a district, and we are wholeheartedly encouraging all of our kids to go that route, and I'm so glad about veterans being added this year.
Same here.
The kids have to meet the TSI requirement. And so, yes, if they meet the TSI requirement, they can count in that area. If they take an AP course and they get a score of 3 or higher, they can be counted. That can count. That CTE just gave us a little bit of a bump.
On this, so we got a one-pager Dr. Duhart taught in our folder that was for 2021. Was that already in it? So I noticed that U.S. Armed Forces was not included there.
Right.
And then we have the industry-based certificate. That's the certificate, not just the course sequence, correct?
Yes.
So the 50 is the correct
So the
baseline?
industry certifications or the industry certificates, all of our kids that are in a program of study, we want to push them when they graduate, we want them leaving with an industry certification.
Right.
What the CTE coherent sequence was that if I started a level 1 course, I'm going to go to level 2, and I'm going to go to level 3, and then level 4 in that program of study, because we would want the kids to get to the practicum level where they would get that certificate. So if the kid was helping us with the CTE sequence, that even if they didn't get that certificate, even though we tried to push you towards the certificate, even if you didn't get the certificate, we still got points for you if you stayed in the sequence of the courses.
But that's, just to clarify, and you probably, I don't know.
I don't have this, but she's sharing it with me, I'm looking at it.
So is that, I'm just curious, like, to get to the 50% baseline, which is what we understood to be our starting point. I see the military is already not in there. Is the categories industry-based certifications, is that correctly counted? Or is that using the old criteria?
So the industry certification is counted separately. So it is going to be part of the CCMR.
Got it. So the 50, I guess my ultimate question is the 50% starting point correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Based on this year.
The new criteria. Okay.
This year's criteria.
Thanks.
And you said it's being reviewed in
And
court
this is
right now?
preliminary, right?
I think what it is the military. Does it want
The
to
military,
release
yes.
districts who is actually enlisted or not?
It was always very tricky
Yes.
to see what they would allow us
To count.
So sometimes the wording first said is intent.
To enlist.
So some districts use that to their favor and said, even if I just said, oh, I think I'm gonna go and never went,
They counted them.
some districts checked that.
Or they took the ASVAB, but
Right.
like
Right.
never.
And they never,
Yeah. And then a district could say, give the ASVAB to every single kid, and then
Yes.
it's all
Yes.
CCMR. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I only ask because if we reduce that target, because this information it would impact that, would we then change it if the court's ruled in a certain way that we can incorporate military and the intent is acceptable? Then we would have to revise that number based on that new information.
if we were to get an update as to new CCMR guidelines, I would definitely want the board to look at it again and see.
But right now, we don't know when that update's ever gonna. They're not. Military's not.
Okay, so given that information, are you guys good with 50 to 65? Or you have, I see a nod. 50 to 65, are you holding on 75? Where are you feeling? Their recommendation is 65.
I'm curious as to where we have the most influence on this, because like, SAT.
I think it's really the
The
CTE.
CTE.
It's the CT courses.
How much of a jump might we expect to see there if we start pushing? Okay, like now we know that the criteria have adjusted. How many more kids might we expect to pick up by having, like, saying, hey, it's to your advantage to like finish this certificate?
Yeah, that's the question.
Can I see this?
Or how many kids did we have enrolled in the courses that were not getting a certificate is maybe my question, a question that would help me.
The question was, how many
How
kids?
many kids would we have gotten the credit for just enrolling in the courses? Like how many kids might we move from like not finishing the certificate to finishing the certificate, because they were like in the right sequence of courses.
Got it.
But just didn't finish it.
I'll have to
Yeah, I don't
look
have,
that up.
I don't.
have that off the top of my
Okay,
head.
we don't know what we were at in 2019. Well, because that also had the military in it.
No, in 2019, we do know where we were at, 56.
We were at 56, okay.
And at 2020, we were at
And that included
68.5.
military or?
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And we were at 68.5 in 2020,
And coherent sequence.
in coherence
Okay.
with those two.
Where were you at 18?
2018, let's see.
But it sounds like the 2020 number might be a better indicator because that didn't include military, but did include coherent sequence. And we were at 68.
It did not include coherent sequence.
And I wanted to see what the
50% did
growth
not,
was
right?
between
Correct.
18 and
It did not.
19
Got it.
as a kind of a normal, without changing stuff. Because those were the same criteria both years, right? 18 and
18
19.
and 19, yeah. 18,
So
19.
in 2018, wow, at 2018, we were at 38%.
38, and we went to what in 2019? 41?
56.
56. So we went 38 to 56.
But that was some strategic strategies that were put in place
And then you
at
said-
every high school.
Don't
Now, my-
apologize for success.
No, I never apologize for success, but I know what we did and I know we can do it again. But however, this is where my concern is this year, is the fact that a lot of our students did not attend school. A lot of them were not engaged. So if I'm coming in after sitting at home for the last almost 18 months, I'm not going to be where I should be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so me getting to an industry certification, which is one of the indicators there, I may not be able to get to that level because now I'm having to recoup what I lost. So if I failed all 4 out of 5 of my classes last year, 4 out of my 5 core classes, then I'm not on the pathway to get, does that make sense?
Certification, yes.
Yes.
But
Now,
can
I
I
do know
ask you
that we do.
this question? If you deployed a strategy to get from here to here, now I'm not saying that that would happen next year because you're right, there's so many things that were lost. But could you deploy similar strategies to get there in 5 years? Because that's a,
This year's
what is that? Somebody add, 24 per point,
this year's current 8th graders. In 5 years, we're looking at,
it's just
4 years, we're looking at.
not making you commit to
5
it,
years,
just
this
ask.
year's current 8th graders.
Looks like our number we came up with last night is a little aggressive.
Was the strategy that was employed one that had to do with the coherence or military?
It was a lot of things.
Okay.
We did a concentrated effort to get all of our seniors TSI tested and ready. So that strategy is still in place.
Yeah.
So we try to push every kid to sit for the TSI exam and pass it. Enrollment in dual credit courses, we put a strategy in place for that to try to encourage kids, that even the kids that would never even think about taking dual credit, trying to move them in that area. Every CTE course is working towards industry certification.
So I'm trying to think of what it is differently that we could do.
And on-ramps is not really.
That's not still continuing from that push.
Right.
We're doing more with on-ramps, I know that.
We are offering more courses with on-ramps.
I mean, we've talked about offering different CTE
CTE
things
courses,
that interest the kids. So we've been talking about, but this isn't something that we could do this quickly. It's gonna take some
This
years.
is gonna take
You know, we've
2
been
years
talking
down the
about,
line.
there's a huge need for underwater welding. We've been talking about the firefighter program. So we have some ideas, you know, in place,
that will lead to industry
Right.
certification.
How many years of sequential coursework does it take to get most certifications?
3.
3? Okay, so we would have at least 2 years to like get it in place. If we were gonna add like a firefighter program, that it would still impact the last year of this. Okay. And I'm not like trying to win an argument here or like get to 75 or something. I hope it's not coming out. I geek out on this stuff, so I like really like to understand the details, but like, yeah. And it is harder with older students, right?
Yes.
Like today's 8th graders are like, wow, their whole middle school experience has been like,
They haven't been in school since 6th grade.
and there's like almost no consequence, you know?
Yeah.
So we've lost a lot of kids like that.
Yeah.
When we look at 65, I mean, it's growth. It's significant growth from where, even from pre-pandemic, it's still significant growth. So somewhere in between here and here, we need to settle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with like straight between 70. I can see the logic behind the 65. This feels like more, because it is harder, it's a different kind of tweaking that takes a long-term plan to get there, you know, and so, yeah.
There's a lot of different factors that make up that number.
What was the 2020 number you said again?
2020 was
50.
50.
So we were at 50 in 2020 and 50 in 2021.
50
No,
at
50,
2021, and then what was the other one you said?
2020, so last year.
I don't have that.
I have it, hold on.
Because I thought you said that was
2020.
2021?
I said 2019 was 56.
2020 was 68.5.
68.
No, it wasn't, that was
It's the
2019.
2020 carried over the exact
Same number,
as 2019 because there was no start
Yes.
test on 2020.
Right.
yes,
So they're the exact same
yeah.
force.
They didn't
56.
calculate the CCMR stuff.
Mm-mm.
Because I wrote down 56 for 2019.
So 2019 was 50.
So we got 38, 56,
2019 was
56, 50.
56.
Is that what we're talking about for the last 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
38, 56, 56, 50?
56 was 2019. Yeah,
Okay.
and then 50 is where we are calculating for 2021 right now.
So that's where, those are the last 4 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am. So many numbers.
So you what?
She said so many numbers.
So there's 18 points to our growth. Our biggest growth is 18 points. We're looking at 15 points to 65. We could strive for another 18-point growth spurt and call it 68.
Yeah, I'm done with 68.
How are we feeling over here on this side of the room with 68?
That's fine.
I can live with it.
I'm still at that,
You're still what?
I'm still at that
65
65,
is more
because there's not as many,
attainable.
there's not as many things to implement to make those increases.
Okay. 68, 68, 65. What one? 65.
What was the number, Jen?
65 or 68?
I'm with Jen, 68.
68
I'm so
or 65?
I'm just sitting here.
You have a number?
Oh, mine, I'm down with
Yes.
Okay, and you?
What's here, I mean, we've done.
Okay,
we have a
so we're going to go
strategy, and
with
even
the
that was still
68 number.
of what we're dealing with right now.
Thanks, Jen. That was all you.
These are all preliminary still.
I'm stretching, okay, I'm stretching.
So we're gonna pause here. We've got dinner ready. But before we do that, I just want to say that, I mean, this conversation, I know it's uncomfortable and it's hard and it's uncomfortable for everyone. It is a great conversation to have because we're talking about students, we're talking about outcomes, we're setting goals, we're doing amazing board work. amazing board work right here. So, Yeah,
I do have to echo that. I really do, because I know that it's hard for me, so I know it's hard for y'all too, because y'all want the very best for our kids. So I do appreciate the honesty from all of you, the transparency. I really do. It's not taken as a joke. It really isn't.
good. So you want to take a break, 15 minutes for dinner? Or do you want to keep slogging through this?
No, I think that is.
Oh, we gotta wait. Betty had to go get something. Go one more. Do one more, I think.
Do one more.
Sorry.
Do one more. Okay.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's take a break. Everybody's having, sorry. Okay, take a break. I'm so sorry. Okay, take a
Everybody
break.
was like, we need a break, we're boycotting. All right, go, let's do, it doesn't matter, we'll just,
Let's take a break.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
So we're gonna take a break, do you need to sign us out?
Yep.
And we'll say, come back at 7?
All
Everybody
right,
can,
we'll take a break right now, 6:43, we'll return at 7